Hello there, and welcome to episode 16 of Colonization Project. Right now, we return to the Marineris Icelander, and it has arrived at Duna, so we are preparing to capture it into an orbit that will intersect Ike, which isn't that hard to get because Ike, yeah, it's a big moon and it's really close to Duna, and it's hard to get an orbit that has Ike's orbit in it, but doesn't actually intersect Ike itself. It's quite hard to do that. It's probably possible, but that is not what we want to do. We actually want to go to Ike right now, and we want to capture into an orbit around it and land on it because we've already done the orbiting thing. So now we gotta land on it with this lander. But you can see we have arrived at Duna by now, and we have also arrived at Ike by now. We still are using that really small kick stage because, it's just extra fuel. We might as well use it. In real life, you would probably just use the probe for that, but this is not real life. This is Kerbal Space Program. And also you can see the surface turn blue. This is because Ike is almost in a perfect orbit around Duna. And every orbit, it has I don't want to say lunar eclipse because it's not. It would be. I'm not sure, but it has the same effect as a lunar eclipse, because in a lunar eclipse the moon turns like red-orange because the light from the Earth's atmosphere hits the moon, and you can see the moon turn red and then dark black because then no light hits it. Same thing happens here, but instead of red, it turns blue because the sunsets on Duna are actually blue, not red, because of carbon dioxide. It's the carbon. Actually, I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but the surface turned blue because of an eclipse. That's basically it. But now, before we land on surface, we just landed. Now, before we return to the Icelander to do a biome hop or two, we return to the MinmusSat-II, which we launched in the last episode, I believe. But now we are trying to get it. We are trying to get it into an orbit, but the bad thing is I used a probe core that doesn't have a reaction wheel, so we can't actually control the attitude of the vessel. Both things did get deorbited in the end, so we don't have to worry about space junk, but oh well. Kind of a bad thing to happen, but those Cyclops launches are pretty cheap, and the probes are pretty cheap too, but we're using ion power, so they're not as cheap as they possibly could be, but I like using ion propulsion on smaller probes. But we returned to the Marineris in order to do a couple biome hops with it and gain as much science as possible, because as you can see, we have a lot of fuel. There are many more biomes on Ike which we can do. However, I want to wait for, I believe it was Demos, to finish scanning all of the biomes around Ike, so we can be more efficient with our fuel, because right now we don't know where any of the biomes are, so not getting the most science out of fuel used, I guess. But we're just doing 2 biome hops, one to, I believe, the mountains, one of the mountain ranges, and then we're doing one to the lowlands. I could have missed one, but I'm not entirely sure, because I wasn't paying attention at the time. But after we've transmitted all of the science back, we can go ahead and hopefully move on to the next launch or mission that we're doing soon, hopefully. Oh, we are unlocking hypersonic flight, which gives us a bunch of new jet engines and an aerospike engine. And now we are launching a brand new version of the space shuttle. This is Pathfinder. It's not a new space shuttle or anything. It just has a few improvements. Probably the biggest improvement that you can see is that instead of the one single wing on the top, we have two wings on the side. That doesn't really do anything. It just makes it look cooler. We are also using the improved booster that we launched Explore in the last. I'm not sure if it was the last episode. It might have been the episode before, but it was one of those episodes. We are using the improved booster with the 4 Vacuum Raptor engines, and you may be able to see it. We are using nuclear engines. This is going to be what all the space shuttles will be like. By all space shuttles, I mean Explorer and Pathfinder. They'll all have nuclear engines so they can carry more payload, and they will all be able to carry more payload, I guess. But where are we taking this new and improved shuttle? We are taking it to Minmus. Of course we are, because where else would we be taking it? I don't believe it has enough thrust to land on the Mun, and we don't really have anything in orbit around the Mun yet. So we're going to Minmus like we always do with the shuttle. But this time it's going to be a bit different. Before, we've only landed we've only landed space shuttles on Kerbin, and we've used the Minimus lander to land on Minimus. We are going to land a space shuttle on Minimus twice in this episode because we're going to do a biome hop. And I decided to do this because I realized we haven't gotten any science from the polar regions of Minimus, and also because I thought we might as well test this new space shuttle and see how well it performs. So that's what we're doing right now. Right now we're heading off to Minimus. We're not going to land for like a couple minutes. Probably less though. But you can see we have just arrived, and we can perform our circularization burn, as well as, I don't know what else. Oh yeah, we're also collecting a bit of science from gravity scans, because gravity scans are biome specific, and I guess that's it. But we can get our engineer Zelmud Kerman out just to make sure like the nuclear engines aren't having like a meltdown. I mean, hopefully they don't. They look fine. They look fine. They don't look melted, or yeah. But you may also see we don't have anything in the cargo bay. We do have something in the cargo bay. We have this little experiment return probe. I was hoping this would be able to. Okay, my plan for this mission was to take the space shuttle down to Minimus, and then we would collect all the science, head back up, and head back to Kerbin. We wouldn't dock with the Minmus Orbital Outpost because that would just add extra complexity to the mission. But we wouldn't be able to get the new science into the science labs. So that's why I built that little probe. But as you will see in the following minutes, that did not happen. We actually do happen to dock with the space station because I decided why not. And also because I wanted Jebediah, Belle, and Bob, and Valentina back before we launch a very exciting thing in the next episode, but I will leave that for I will leave that for later. But as you can see, we have landed much like a plane on Minimus with no atmosphere. Kind of strange. But you can also see we're not slowing down. I have the brakes on, but we are not slowing down. So I decide to turn the space shuttle around and sort of go back, because we also weren't in the polar region. I mean, we are in the polar region, we just aren't in the polar biome. But you can see we have touched down safely. For some reason, the space shuttle is a bit back heavy right now, so we just move a lot of the fuel forward in the tanks, and that sort of seems to do the trick. It's still kind of wobbly, I guess, but we can move across the surface and hopefully head to the polar biome, so we can get more science, so we can get more technology, so we can get more science and more technology. That's pretty cool. But you can see it wasn't that far to the polar biome, and we can land once again for the third time this episode. I said we've only landed 2 times, but I guess it's more. I'm not sure why I just quick save reverted there, but might have been to like fix a bug or something. But you can see we have landed, we are stable, and we can get our Kerbals out on EVA hopefully soon. You can see I was just trying to find out why that front wheel was above the ground. But we can collect all the new science. We didn't bring every science instrument along, but we brought along some of them. And we can get our engineer Sergey. Actually, no. Sergey Kerman is our scout, which means he can stay in space for really long, because he doesn't go crazy because of like not having anyone around in space, or not having enough room to stretch their legs in space. But we can get him out, plant a flag, and have all the Kerbals like pose for a picture. That might be the thumbnail. Might also not be. I mean, I don't know yet. I always do the title and thumbnail after I finish recording the voiceover, because actually I'm not sure why. I guess it's just I guess I just do it because it's time spent, the time spent uploading the video to YouTube. I can make a title and thumbnail in that time, so I just do it afterwards because I'm just like, why not? But now we have collected all the science, and we can head. So what we're trying to do now is we're trying to head to the equator of Minimus, so we can dock with the space station. So we're landing on Minimus. So, okay, let me try to explain this again. This is not going well. So what we're going to do is we're going to hop to the surface to the equator of Minimus, and by doing that, it allows us to head back to the Minmus Orbital Outpost. We're going to dock with the Minmus Orbital Outpost, and then we're going to take, I believe it's Enterprise back to Kerbin, and Pathfinder is going to stay on the space station. I know that's what happens because I recorded this not too long ago. I'm almost done editing all my footage, thankfully. But now, Oh, yeah. Another fun fact about this mission, I decided to try and land us where we first landed on Minmus. You can see we do break off that back flap. Thankfully, we have an engineer on board who can repair that. This is MinmusSat-II, and it is actually the first probe that landed on Minmus in the series. So, since it was close to where we were heading, I was just like, why not go ahead and visit it? Because I always like visiting old probes with newer missions, because it's like a historical site. Maybe we'll make it like a tourist attraction around here. I mean, there are space tourists in KSP, and they do pay quite a bit of money in order to go there. So, I mean, we might make a tourist attraction based off of this site, or maybe not. But I think the Minmus base, which I do have a name for, but you'll see that in the future, which is not now, is probably going to be in Great Flats, because, well, why wouldn't it be? It's flat. It doesn't have the greatest abundance of resources, but it does have, the flats is flat, and that's great for constructing bases. And also, with USI colonization, you can actually transport resources from base to base without needing anything but, I believe it's quartermaster. You need a quartermaster Kerbal in order to transport resources. I think pilots can do it too, but they're less efficient at it. So, yeah, you can actually do that. So we don't actually need... The main colony will probably be in the flats because it's flat. The mining operations will be in the places with the highest resource concentration, because we want all the resources. Because that's how you make a colony self-sufficient. You can't just send supplies up every 2 days, because that's not what self-sufficient means. So that's how I plan to do the base, but chances are we won't see the base for a while, and we're also going to need to send some new mining equipment up to Minmus in order to start making a base self-sufficient. But that's all for the future. But right now we are back in orbit, and we are trying to dock with the Minmus Orbital Outpost. Not much to talk about here. It's just a simple docking, and you can see us. I don't know. There's not much to talk about here. It's just us docking to the Minmus Orbital Outpost. So that's about it, I guess. But I'm not sure how long this takes, but we are going to get Jebediah, Bill, Bob, and Valentina back into what is it called? Oh, Enterprise. That's what the starship is called. We are leaving, I believe it's Tomball on board, because the space shuttle that we brought, Pathfinder didn't bring along 2 scientists, and we want as many scientists as possible in the labs. We have 3 labs, which means 3 scientists, and that means we want as much scientists as possible to research the most amount of science. Actually, it can store 6 scientists on the science lab, because each one holds 2 Kerbals. I'm not sure if that does anything to like the rate science is produced. But we are leaving Tom Bowen on board, and he will still just be researching science, although with a new crew. And we can try and get Jebediah, Bill, Bob, and Val back home. I'm pretty sure that's all the rest of the episode is, so it's not the most eventful episode, but it's still rather long. It's 26, almost 27 minutes long. And like over half of the episode is just us doing things around Minmus, although it seems to be what most of the colonization project is right now. But I mean, you got to build up the infrastructure, right? You can't have you can't have colonies without infrastructure. Infrastructure is quite important to colonies, especially if you want to make them self-sufficient. I think it's quite hard to have a Minmus colony without knowing where the resources are or not having science. I mean, right now I think it's almost impossible for us to have a self-sufficient colony because we don't have the tech to unlock like the manufacturing plants or the agriculture modules. We still need a lot of tech before that happens, but that doesn't mean we can't start making colonies right now. But we still won't be doing them for a while because we have other things to do, like returning Enterprise home, which is what we're doing right now. We do actually have a Kerbal to rescue. He's in sort of an elliptical orbit. Actually, no. He's in an inclined orbit. That's definitely not an elliptical orbit. He's in a bit of an inclined orbit, but we have a bunch of extra fuel on the starship, so we can easily do this. It's not. It won't cost us too much to do this, and we might as well get as much done as possible with one mission. Because, multitasking, it makes things cheaper. Because you're not launching as much. But now we are trying to rescue this Kerbal, and after that we are heading back to Kerbin and landing, because it would be kind of bad if we weren't landing. I'm not sure how they would get home. I mean, I guess parachutes, but if you're using parachutes, you're also landing. It's just not under your own power. So it'd be pretty bad if we weren't landing back at home, or at least landing safely back at home. But now we're just trying to head back and get ourselves back to the Kerbal Space Center, because I like landing things back at the Kerbal Space Center or on a drone ship if we have to, because it looks cooler to land things back at the Kerbal Space Center. It looks a lot more realistic, and also everywhere else on Kerbin is either flat or not flat, mostly landing to the not flat side. However, if the space center is perfectly flat, we can land there. We can land there with anything, almost anything. I mean, anything that has enough fuel to do it, chances are we can land it. But it's not very flat. Actually, I'm not sure what I'm saying here. The Space Center area is very flat, and we also have the landing pads, which are very flat, so we can land Starship on them and not risk having it tip over. That would be kind of bad. Because, you know, we have crew members on board. We wouldn't want to do that. And especially since we have Jebediah, Bill, and Bob and Valentina on board. We definitely don't want to be losing the original four. But you can see we are heading back to the Space Center. And we are trying to land. Pretty standard re-entry. We've done this how many times before? 3 times with the Starship? Maybe 4. No, 3 times before, I believe. I could be wrong. And then we've done this even more times with the Space Shuttle. And even more times with the Endurance. Because I like reusability, and reusing the main part of the spacecraft is very important because that reduces costs a lot. But now we have re-entered the atmosphere. We are doing the belly flop maneuver, and you can see I noticed that Kerbal Engineer Redux actually has a hover slam calculator. I tried to do this as accurately as possible, but I started it a bit too late, and even with our 3 engines up and running, we end up crashing down onto the runway at like 25 meters per second. So not the safest landing, but another happy one nonetheless. And that will be the end of this episode. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.